and welcome to the Q Lounge Live. Hi, I am your host, Shannon Townsend, aka Shady Group. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with all of you tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. What an amazing Independence Day that we had over the last few days. The celebration of America, the celebration of you. Let's remember that the celebration of America is the celebration of you. It's the celebration of our unity. It's the celebration of what it is that it means to be us. Thank you so much for joining me here. This is the Q Lounge Live. This is our living room. This is where we gather every week to talk and discuss the unbelievable presidency that has been, that is becoming Donald J. Trump's second term in office. Here we have many people interested in tearing down what it is that you and I and all of our forefathers for 2.5 centuries built, all of us working together to form a more perfect union. And now you have an enemy at the gate that is squaring off to you all 1 to 1. What an amazing moment that is. He's no longer able to hide in the light. There was a notable poster on the internet a number of years ago that came by to say darkness to light, or the ones to be exposed will be pushed into the light. And you're currently seeing that happen right now. They're being all pushed into the light. They're being pushed into the light, and they're being forced to tell you what it is they really think. Do you understand that these people that we're talking about have been telling us that they are kind of like us for almost a decade now? But are they really like us? Thank you. I see Yao Ming in here. I see Joe Ray Perkins, 17 Patriots for Truth. Thank you so much for joining the show. Eddie Mike, God bless you, sir. All of the people, there's a ton of people here in the background that have been working diligently around this group, our mission here. What is our mission? Our mission is to get to the bottom of things. People don't want you to get to the bottom of things for a very specific reason. They don't want you to have good information. They don't want you to figure anything out for yourself, because if they can keep you confused, then they can keep you in this kind of like middle area of where, you're not really sure, you can't make a decision, you don't really understand what's going on. I'm not smart enough to get that stuff. All of that's gobbledygook, and it's part of the stuff that's there to throw a wrench in the bicycle spokes, or whatever you want to refer to it. I'm so blessed to be here. I'd like to say again, thank you to each and every one of you who have contributed to this broadcast, to this show over the years. We are currently we're doing episode 3 tonight. If you're out there in the podcast world, maybe, and you're thinking you're skeptical of some of the Q things, I would recommend to go back to episode 1 here and get a really good understanding, a nice cross-section of what it was that we experienced during Q. It is not something that's difficult to understand. It's not something that's complicated. It's not something that is even necessarily it's not something that you should be afraid of. And I think that maybe is the larger point. People trying to make you afraid of something, and you should trust yourself and trust your own discernment, and recognize that if anybody is telling you anytime at any point that you should think for yourself, at minimum, they're not trying to brainwash you or to sell you something. They have a hidden agenda. They're trying to just explain something to you. So that's the road that we take here in understanding how it is that all of us can start to, and I do mean that, start to work together from a ground up basis, like a foundation. We're effectively going to build here in these first few episodes a foundation for what we're talking about. So if anybody is confused about the conversation, we can send them back and get a reference to what it was that we're explaining. But this is an unfolding thing. The stuff that's going on with Donald Trump, that's going on right now, is a moment where the rubber is meeting the road, as far as us finally having the real conversation. A year and a half ago, you didn't really know that Tucker Carlson was a Nazi commie. You didn't really know that Candace Owens was the demon witch that she is. You didn't really understand who these people were that were, had TPUSA in their sights, as a matter of fact, and they've been trying to destroy TPUSA long before the terrible murder of Charlie Kirk. But the real reason that these people are animated, we're going to show you tonight, because it's power. It's about having power, and it's about being able to wield it over you and being able to utilize it to destroy society as we know it. If you like your society, then we want to change it. That's what they're all telling you, whether it be Antifa, whether it be BLM or anything else. Everything that they say will say something, will say the same thing in the regard that what you're doing is wrong. Okay, let's start from there. They don't qualify or quantify or explain at all how what you're doing is wrong. Like, how is thinking that people are innocent until proven guilty wrong? Or how is treating each individual as an individual wrong? Or how is giving a sympathy towards someone who deserves sympathy in a situation wrong? These things they're targeting. Usually what you'll notice is they target the things that are right, the things that are good, and the things that are true. That's what they target. And that's why I think that they targeted this show, and they've targeted each and every one of you in some form or another. I almost guarantee that everybody here, if you're here, has experienced some sort of censorship over the years. How you feeling, Bud Mama? I see you out there. Hey, Augie, Little Bear, Dragon Baby, how are you guys doing? 17's out there in the chat for me, so I can see if you had an amazing Independence Day, and if you're going to fight with us to teach the country that this country is worth saving. That standing down whenever communists and bullies are in the room is not the right approach. You see, we talked about it today on the MG show. We're going to try to make polite society again. Polite society means that everybody knows that everybody else is packing. Well, what are we going to be packing? We're going to be packing information. We're going to be packing you with what it is that you need to know so that you can argue with people that pretend like they're smarter than you because they have some education from some university and they point to some degree and they look down their nose at you and they call you, quote, the flyover part of the country. Meanwhile, they only capitulate to the insanity that is the Washington or the New York and LA Democrat class, which are they Democrats? If you take the definition about what is a Democrat, or let's say what is a Democrat in the modern era, or for you, what not? They're not Democrats. They're clearly communists. They're 100% without a doubt. They're clearly communists, and now they're telling you that they're clearly communist. They're telling you with glee that they're communists, and so effectively, what do we have to do? What's our job? What our job now is to do is to show everybody that thinks Trump bad, that if you want to run around in your little yapper thinking Trump bad, then you're saying communism good. And you're a lot of people in this country are starting to realize, I mean, you see this thing that's happening with Plattner right now. A lot of people are starting to realize, wait a minute, the Democrats just brought this guy in and they were willing to bring him all the way to be a senator. They didn't care about anything that any of the other people said until this recent allegation came out. The Nazi tattoos, not a big deal. All of these different things. Interestingly enough, we were able to get everybody on the record, but what is it? What is it that everybody needs to stand up for? What you need to stand up for is you need to stand up for the rule of law. Now, when I say that, you're going to hear me say that, and you're going to be like, oh, but what about all those guys? What about all those guys that have this little, it's like, well, I didn't do anything wrong until you catch me. Like the guys that are up there in the woods that are cooking moonshine, that they're running away from the revenuers, right? They're like trying to avoid the law. Those guys aren't the same as these guys. Okay? The guys that are running from the revenuers up in the hills and the mountains of Appalachia aren't the same type of guys that we're talking about right now that are the communist infiltration of your country that are currently very, very focused on occupying every form of government to control you. That's what they're currently working on. And so, we have this nice, awesome dynamic in America between the moonshiner and the police chasing them and the roadrunner and coyote, that type of thing. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the bedrock for society. Most Americans understand that if they're out there and they are doing something, quote unquote, illegal, and they get caught, that they're going to have to pay the price for the consequences of their actions. And we are all agreeing on that as a society that, yes, if you get caught and you get convicted by a jury of 12, then yes, sir, you're going to have to serve your time back to the country. But if you don't get caught and you're not convicted by a jury of 12 people of your peers, then you continue along as an American being innocent. That's what we believe in. That's what I believe in. I believe that that's what you believe in. And so what we have to, what our job is, our mission as human beings is to talk to people in a rational manner and explain to them why communism is dangerous. And so you can't really explain to people why it is dangerous unless you know what the hell it is or where it comes from, because what you're going to see is everybody talks about it in this utopian manner, this mindset of like, oh, well, one day we're going to get it right. It's killed millions of people in China. It's killed millions of people in Russia. It's killed millions of people in Central Europe. It's killed millions of people over a couple of 100 years now, 150 years or so. Millions and millions of people have died at the hands of communism, but we're just going to get it right here, maybe here in a few minutes. 17 Patriots for Truth, $47 rant. Appreciation for the Q Lounge Live. Thank you, Shady Groove. Thank you. Thank all of you, man. This is an amazing time. And it's amazing to be able to have, I think, maybe I'm wrong. I'd love to hear your feedback. I think that we're like, I think we're entering a moment where there's a thirst. There's finally a thirst in America. Like, if you go back and you look at the era of McCarthy, or even the era whenever we were growing up, the stuff about the music and the backward stuff in the music, and they were talking about Satanism and communism. What if they're the same thing? And what if the establishment has been like distracting or destroying any evidence or manipulating society at the best that they can 24/7 to try to prevent anybody from realizing not only are those two things the same, but that they're being implemented by the people that act like they have a moral compass that's somehow directed in or on a heading that's somehow better than yours. So let's take it apart. Let's take it apart here tonight. We're going to, I think this is going to be a fantastic journey through the history and the understanding of what communism really is. I'm not going to be sitting here and giving you a political science lecture from 20 different random political science teachers in a university that just mouth off gobbledygook 24/7 and never really actually say anything. I'm going to show you some rock solid evidence, and you are going to be able to decide for yourself. If I'm over the target, you will take the information and share it with other people. And if I'm not, you will say, send me an email at shady@mg.show and argue with me. Or pretty soon, I think 2 weeks from tonight, we are going to be opening the call-in lines for you to call in and talk directly to me and with anything you would like to talk about, whether it's relevant to what we're talking about on the show or not. The call lines are going to be open for you to call with anything that you have questions about that we've said here for the last 8 years or so. Philly Bud Mama, $10. Communism bad. Is it really hard? Exactly. Communism bad. Midnight's Watch. I'm excited to see where did communism actually come from. Let's go. All right, let's dig into it. First off, we got a little bit of business to get to. We have to make sure to remind everybody that we are over here in the Substack. I want to get you all over here. We'll have some links for you down in the chat for Substack. Get over there. We're putting out a weekly newsletter on the shows from last week, and the stuff that we're doing right now is just amazing. Like the way that we've kind of got Grok working with getting our memes done and putting our show together each day, and the help that it's been with doing this show to you and taking a little bit of the burden off of me of the amount of work that it actually takes to put this together has been really awesome. So here we have MG Show at Substack, and we also want you to get over there and get the MG Show app. As a matter of fact, if you have this app on your phone, you would be able to be tuning in to the show right now live. You can see that it's currently highlighted right here for all of you, for the convenience of everybody out there, the unbelievable nonsense of Rumble or whatever the platform is freezing on you. We're hoping that this makes things a little bit easier to make your experience here better, which is our goal and mission. And then, of course, we're going to jump right here to, my goodness, the largest fireworks celebration in American history. And then, watch the media lose their minds because he is putting on the largest fireworks show in American history. They're so triggered by every single thing that this man does. And it's absolutely amazing, isn't it? Whenever we talk about Donald Trump is performing 5D chess. I'm almost like, it's more like he's a conductor of an orchestra, and and he can set each and every one of these people off in 3 seconds. All they have to do. Cheers to the Q Lounge. Lisa, hey, thank you so much. Episode 3, part 2. Here we go. And we're going to, like I said, we're going to go step by step through this. This is not going to be complicated to understand. And you're going to see clearly, I think, the overarching point that I'm trying to make is a very valid connection. But first off, let's make sure that we're in synchronicity with the President of the United States. I will be speaking at 1:30 p.m. This is from 6:26. So just last week, to the Faith and Freedom Coalition. At one of the statements I will be making, perhaps the most important of them all, concerns the recent election of communists in our country. Communism is very easy to sell. I'd be the greatest communist in history. I'd give free rent, free houses, free food. Everything is free. Unfortunately, after 2 or 3 years, the country where this is taking place would fail. It always does. And then you'll start living in squalor. There will be no food, there will be no housing, and there will be no military. There will be nothing. There will be no nothing. You'll be third world in every way, and everyone will suffer or die. I'm sorry to say, but assassinations of those who oppose them is a very important element of their ideology. They're animals in many cases, that not smart, but in some cases they are. It's easy for them to get followers because they make promises that they know they can't keep. And the Democrats aren't fighting back. And in many ways, they're allowing them to go their own way. They're afraid they will lose their election. They're afraid of conflict. They're not smart enough or tough enough to fight this plague. If they fought them the way they fight Republicans or me, they'd be victorious. But they don't have the courage to do so. These are not social democrats. These are hardcore, godless communists. This is the most serious threat to our country since its existence 250 years ago. Isn't it ironic? We're celebrating a very important birthday, and instead of speaking about Christ, freedom, and victories of all kinds, we're speaking about yet another threat to the foundations of America. These ruthless communists will attack all religions, but in particular Christianity. They always do. All communist countries attack religions violently. As you know, we recently struck Nigeria and largely ended the slaughter of their great Christian population. They know that if they go further, the attack will be greater, and in that they don't want to get involved. I am saving Christians throughout the world. Even though we are not in those various countries, by hitting these terrorists violently and hard, they will close your churches. They will kill your people. This is what they're about. This is the greatest threat to our country since its founding 250 years ago. President Donald J. Trump. He says, this is the greatest threat. Not DEI, not men and women's sports, not pride flags. A lot of the other stuff, the emotional stuff that the media throws at you and tries to get you to glom onto and to be emotionally attached to. And then so you start lashing out amongst other people that you know and love, trying to turn your mind around. That's a pretty bold statement. That's 6/26, 2026. Here you have July 3rd, 2026, the White House. You can be a communist or you can be a patriot. You cannot be both. Okay? These people that are Antifa and BLM and Democrats out there trying to make you think they are patriots to their cause, the cause of communism. That's what they're trying to invert. That's what the media is trying to sell you. That they are patriots to their cause and you are infiltrating their space. That's the way the media is spinning it. The Communist Party is made up of illegal immigrants, criminals, and everybody that doesn't want to work. President Donald J. Trump. Now, isn't that interesting? We'll stop right there for just a second. Isn't that interesting? Everybody that doesn't want to work. Isn't it interesting that he said that? Why is that interesting? Well, it's interesting because Aren't all your political science professors selling you communism in the regard that it's a workers advocate process or institution? Communism is like there to like help out the little guy and lift the little guy up and stick it to the man. Now that's literally what they've been selling this as since the beginning, since it started. You know, it's like I think it was I don't know if I have it here, but I think it was Reagan. Somebody asked him, like, how do you know if somebody is a communist? Like that, it was, I think it was like a media person asking Reagan, like, how do you know if somebody is a communist? And he said, if they read Marx or Lenin. Pretty simple. You know, you're reading stuff that is that literally opposes. It's literally built. Communism is built to oppose you, and as an American, communism is built as a counterbalance to you as an American. That's what we're going to prove here tonight. That's how we're going to teach people in a very, very easy to understand way. It's not complicated. We're not coming down on anybody. They've made this very, very complicated to understand for a specific reason, because a lot of the times when things are very simple, it's hard to use a Hegelian dialectic problem, reaction, solution scenario. If it's simple, they make it complicated first, and then they use it as a device against you. So let's jump over here. So you see, you've heard from the president, you heard what they said about communism specifically. So let's take a look at current communist goals. This is from January 10, 1963. This is a list of the goals. This is published by the communists themselves, by the naked communists. This is not like Shannon going to like the corners of the internet and finding some rogue little piece of paper to bring to you and show you. This is their goals. This is their demands per their talking points. Not mine, not Trump's. The people who are communists that Trump is standing up to want these things. And so instead of sit here and read all of this, because that is extraordinarily small and I'm not going to be able to do this, I have used Grok to help us along today. And so we can just buzz through this. I'm not going to read all of these to you because it's not necessary to read all of these to you. I'm going to read you the 10 planks here in just a second, which are the most important, but I want you to see a larger cross section of what it is that they, this is effectively, think of this like this is 1963, right around the time, this was before Kennedy was killed. Okay, so this is going on in our country at a time where Kennedy was standing up against the communists, and they weren't very happy about it. So here's some of their demands. The U.S. acceptance of coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war. U.S. willingness to capitulate in preference to engaging in atomic war. Develop the illusion that total disarmament by the United States would be a demonstration of moral strength. Permit free trade between all nations regardless of communist affiliation and regardless of whether or not items could be used for war. Free trade, extension, nobody even heard of free trade at this point. Extension of long-term loans to Russia and Soviet satellite countries. Provide American aid to all nations regardless of their communist denomination. Grant recognition of China and admission of Red China to the UN. Well, that happened. Set up East and West Germany as separate states in spite of Khrushchev's promise in 1955 to settle Germany's question for free elections under supervision of the UN. Prolong the conferences to ban atomic testing because the U.S. has agreed to suspend tests as long as negotiations are in process. Allow all Soviet satellites individual representation in the UN countries. Promote the UN as the only hope for mankind. Resist any attempt to outlaw the Communist Party. Do away with all loyalty oaths, like your oath that you take in the military. Or essentially a pledge of allegiance is to some degree a, quote, loyalty oath. Continue giving Russians access to the U.S. Patent Office. Capture one or both of the political parties of the United States. Well, they got them both. MAGA came, took one back. They got them both. We came, took one back. And they're not happy about it. Neither side's very happy about that, by the way. Are you noticing that? Neither side's very happy about that. Use technical decisions of the courts to weaken basic American institutions by claiming their activities violate civil rights. Get control of the schools. Use them as a transmission belt for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum. Get control of teachers' associations. Do they have control of the teachers' association? Or do you think that them getting control of the teachers' unions is just happenstance, and that Donald Trump is saying we're got to get rid of the Department of Education, which is what's funding the teachers' unions? That's Donald Trump taking apart education, not getting rid of the communists. Do you see what they're doing? Gain control of all student newspapers. That's already the case. Look at this. They're able to get people to walk out of their schools and attack people that are Jewish. The Jewish people are doing it to other Jewish people. Use student riots to foment public protest against programs or organizations which are under communist attack. Infiltrate the press. Get control of book review assignments, editorial writings, policy-making positions. Gain control of key positions in radio, TV, motion pictures, on and on and on. I need to read all of this to you. Present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, healthy. Infiltrate churches. Replace revealed religion with social religion. Discredit the Bible. Emphasize that the need for intellectual maturity, which does not need a religious crutch. Eliminate prayer or any phase of religious expression. Are the communists winning? So out of those few things that I've just read right there, how many of those things have the communists already achieved? There's like 50 or something there. If I keep reading them, you're going to continue to see all the things that they have actually achieved. Little incrementalism, little bites, little pieces. They're getting little pieces all the time. Another little piece. Here's another little piece. Here's another little piece. Chipping away in what they determine internally as, quote, incrementalism. Well, Donald Trump came and he turned their incrementalism into a full-on rush to the forefront of the lines to start firing every missile that you could find. They went from your media being 60% against the elected party, 40% for the elected party, no matter what the party, Democrat, Republican, 60% against, 40% for. You can literally map these numbers out throughout the time since the start of radio. It never differentiated. The media consistently 60% against an elected party, 40% for, until 2015. Until Donald Trump won the election in 2016. Let's say 2016, after he won the election. That is when we can point to specifically that it completely changed. And it went 95% against the elected president to 5% for. And the 5% that's for was like weak and spineless and hard to even follow, but they were actually trying to choke out support for our great president in the media. There's no pretending that didn't happen. COVID didn't cause that. It happened 4 years before COVID. Had nothing to do with COVID. It has to do with something else. It has to do with a hidden agenda that Donald Trump triggered through Q to expose itself for what it really was, because it was hiding in the shadows and no one could really see it. And whenever I personally would try to talk to people about this stuff, they would look at you and act like, no, this is not right. None of this is could possibly be going on. Now people are becoming red pilled in 3 seconds. They're going from like no red pill to completely red pilled in a couple of weeks. Why? Because there's information that we have generated as a whole, not of America, but in general on the internet, that has been generated that points enough fingers at the problem to where if you're really truly looking to dig in to find the problem, you can find it a lot easier than it was whenever I was trying to find it and using a library, because it wasn't in the library. As a matter of fact, every book in the library told me that what it was that I was seeing was fake. And a lot of the stuff that you're going to see here tonight, they will tell you effectively that, no, it's not right, that this is fake. It's not really there. Well, like I said, they have their right to say whatever they want to say. And you have the right to say whatever you want to say, and you actually have the right to think whatever it is you want to think. The 10-point plan of the Communist Manifesto. Understand it so you can defend against it. This doesn't really take a lot of explanation. I'm going to read it to you. I've read this before. I've done this on the Q Lounge before, or something similar. Not exactly what we're going to do tonight, though. More about the explanation of how they're implementing it. Tonight, we're going to dig into like where the hell this stuff's coming from. Abolition of private property. No longer have any private ownership of property. That is the cornerstone. That is the difference. Notice the people, they will say things like, you stole our land. What the hell does that mean? No, we bought the land, or the state decided to become part of America, and the person that is residing there that put up their fence or their property owns that property. They pay taxes on it. And so that is protected by law enforcement. If you get rid of private ownership of property, there is no reason to have a law ownership or a law and order aspect to it whatsoever. Nobody has any property. Everybody's just wherever the hell they want to be, and they can live in your house if they want to. A heavy progressive or graduated income tax, take more money from people who have higher income. Like Mondami is even saying it right now, abolish the right of an inheritance. Well, that's the death tax. We've had that. Trump took that away, but that's born out of communism also. All of these different things you're going to notice are born out of communism. Confiscate property owned by immigrants and rebels. Anybody that resists, their property gets taken away. Establish national bank. Well, they were able to do that in 1913. And we can prove that the people that established that bank called the Federal Reserve in 1913 are communist bloodline connected to the ancient nationally controlled communications and transport, government ownership of the means of production, industrial and agricultural armies. You see, that's what the you think about the government agencies. The government agencies are that. That's what they're supposed to be used for. That's what they were built, these things for, so that they could use them to stop and control production and prevent X person that they don't want from having X thing, or allow the person that's doing the right thing to have what it is that they can have. Redistribute population, eliminate sovereignty of the state or the town by redistributing people, and free and public education, elimination of children, the elimination of children doing factory work, and combine education and manufacturing. Fascism, communism, socialism, feudalism, you can call it whatever you want. Feudalism, communism, globalism, and socialism are exactly the same thing and come from the same place and are administered by the same people. They hide it by getting us to attack one another. You've heard all roads lead to Rome. They neglect to mention it also means Rome can now come to you. If there's a road, they built the road to you. Where did they come from? Why do they deem themselves your master? What is it that makes them think you are their slave? Especially if you're an American. Because there's a very, very key point to understand here about the timeline and about what we're talking about. And this is what we're getting ready to move into. How far back this goes and what it connects to. And you know, what, as an American, this is not like something that this is something we can do something about. And that's why you're going to find me so animated a little bit about this in general, like not just tonight, but in general. You see me on the MG show. You see my animation for this. You see the passion. The passion is real because the threat is real. And I see a lot of you out there that understand this, that it's serious. People get hurt. Lots of people get hurt, and no one has to get hurt. And the reason they're getting hurt is because people are undermining the faith and the trust in law enforcement and law and order. Do I think there are no corrupt police? No. Do I think that there are no police that are bad? No. Do I think that there is no issue in every single? No, I don't. I think there are problems everywhere. I think that every city, I think that the blue cities and the police layer is a big, big problem because they're not. The police in these districts have learned that if they go out and they arrest somebody for something, then they just get released back on the street. They're the ones out there on the beat. They're the ones driving through the neighborhoods. They're the ones that are driving by and see the guy walking back home after he's been released from prison for hurting someone the day before without any type of consequence. That right there, my friends, breeds a layer of cynicism that you are not accustomed to. It did not exist when we were young. There was, whenever I say respect of law and order, I mean, like, whenever you see a police officer, you straighten up a little bit. You're not speeding around. You're like recognizing that, there's respect around. Everybody has it. But look at what you're seeing these BLM people do. They see a law enforcement officer and they have absolutely no respect. They have the opposite of that. That's an animalistic response. That's primitive, if you will. Communism was born in a time of a dire need to counterbalance American might. That's why communism was born. Because of America and because of the strength of America and because of the control system of the world having existed now for around 75 or 80 years or so, realizing that they had lost grip on a segment of humanity that had never been lost in the history of Earth since we can go back in time, ever recorded, non-existent. Everything that they tried to utilize to stop America from happening after, up until, and around 1776, 1812, a number of other times, a number of other things that happened to try to destroy America. The Civil War was implemented to try to destroy America. After all of that had failed, and they could not stop us, that's when communism became a thing. And then they utilized the destruction of Iran, Russia, and Germany and their governments as a precursor and a way or an opportunity to figure out how it is that the ones that are behind the curtain, not the ones that you've ever heard of, the ones that are behind the curtain can regain control that they have lost in 1776 per the Declaration of Independence. That is a war declaration against the kings and queens of the world and an establishment of the rule of law as our king. We pledge to one another as Americans that we are going to hold each other accountable to certain things that we deem unlawful or illegal, and there are consequences to these things, and we will accept you back into society after you've paid your due. That nothing like that had existed before. If you screwed up or pissed off the king, you went to the dungeon. And the dungeon was exactly where you stayed. You never came out of the dungeon. The scribe wasn't coming down there to like you see in the movies to try to give you a little hacksaw so you could saw your way out of the dungeon. They had no sympathy for you. They actually thought that because the king had deemed you a criminal, that you were in fact a criminal. Not any other people. One person that got upset at whatever it was that you got in the way of them doing. Whether you were talking about it, whether you were being combative, whatever it was. They owned you. They owned you. How did they own you? Why do they think they own you? What in the world makes them think they own you? That's what communism really is. And that's who's implementing it. You have two roads. You have kingship and you have rule of law. There's no middle. You have kingship that has ruled earth for thousands and thousands of years through kingship all the way up. You can make the timeline. Kingship. Here's 1776. Kingship. I'm going backwards because I'm going backwards. Kingship going this way. 1776. Kingship hits a hard stop. called America. Your forefathers did it for you. It's your obligation to be reverent to them, and it's your obligation to spread their message. It's your obligation to stand up and annoy people that are annoyed whenever you talk about how great America is or what it is that we're doing here. That's exactly what it was that the people were doing in the streets in 1776 whenever the Declaration of Independence was written. And it's very interesting, too, because a lot of people think, oh, the Declaration of Independence was like written and sent to the king. It wasn't. The Declaration of Independence was written. There were 20 copies of it made. The original copies, it's called something. I can't think of what it's called, but there's a word that it's called the whatever copies of the, starts with a B, the broad something. I can't think of it. The British had captured a couple people that had these and sent it back to the king. The king didn't see the Declaration of Independence for a couple of months. Things are going on. Think about it. Like the king is in England. Implementing taxes is easy. We just say, oh, don't go out and tax these people. Every country, every single country ever created or currently in existence on planet Earth bows to a king or the kingship elite, but one. That's not ambiguous. That's not an overstatement. That's not an exaggeration. They can call this type of government or that type of government or whatever. Whenever the rubber meets the road, the king or the monarch or the elite or the last people to claim, quote, kingship or ownership has the final say in every country but one. That's the reason you're special. That's the reason it means something more. And that's the reason that what we're seeing right now with this whole thing with communism is so dangerous, because they've been pretty damn successful in what they've done, especially to the modern culture with the utilization of television, radio, and music, entertainment, and movies and things like that. The counterculture is a great example. You're taking all of this propaganda, and you're turning it against people that have well intentions. The people weren't for the Vietnam War, and they shouldn't have been for the Vietnam War. So then you have to implement them to say that because they're against the Vietnam War, then the American government, the American way of life is the problem, not the current people that are running it. That's where they went off. It's not like they went off. That's where they were directed. It's a thesis, antithesis thing that played out, whether it be the introduction of the music, the introduction of all of the propaganda from overseas, trying to weaken us. They've been dead set on weakening us for the last 35 years or so, specifically our generation, Generation X, massively targeted to tell you that you're not worthy, that you don't mean anything, that you're never going to have anything, you don't deserve anything, you need to reduce your carbon footprint to nothing, to like a literal footprint. Meanwhile, you're going to come out here and you're going to pay your taxes so the Somalis can come in here and get free Medicaid. Communism. Take from you that are very generous and give to them until the point where you've got nothing left, and then take what they've got that you gave to them because they don't have any ability to defend it. You see? You'll defend it. Hope we're painting a good picture. And we're getting ready to actually open this conversation up a little bit more. First off, I'm going to make sure that I describe to you, because I mentioned the word feudalism. I want you to understand whenever I say feudalism, what it is. So you can recognize feudalism, communism, globalism, socialism. They use all these words, lots of words. Feudalism, this is not some dark corner of the internet definition. Feudalism is a decentralized political and economic system from medieval Europe, 9th to 15th century, where land and protection were exchanged for loyalty and labor. The monarch theoretically owned all the land in the kingdom, keeping a portion for the crown and parsing out the rest to the loyal nobles. And they were even, believe it or not, called the commies. The commies were the loyal nobles, the ones that went out and found new land from people that weren't able to defend themselves. Lords and nobles received massive land grants. This is the way countries were born. This is the bedrock of civilization. We're going to do a refresher right here before we move into the next layer so that you can see clearly communism is a tool being used by the globalists to further their agenda against you. It's a tool. The First World War, this is one of the things that they will tell you that's not real. They will tell you that what I'm reading to you is fake and made up, and it wasn't really part of the of Pike's plan to create global chaos and bring the world under a one world religion. No. That wasn't that's not what you're seeing here. Even though, like, does this match up with what's happened? The First World War would be fomented to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia. Result, Russia becomes a fortress of atheistic communism. This would destroy other governments and weaken religious setting the stage for further manipulation. World War II, to be fomented by exploiting the differences between fascists and political Zionists. You see this? The fascists are out there screaming and yelling about the Zionists right now. And the Zionists are screaming and yelling about the fascists. Destruction of Nazism and fascism, strengthening of the political Zionism, and establish a sovereign state of Israel in Palestine. Meanwhile, international communism would grow strong enough to challenge and balance Christendom. This is written down. I didn't write this. Third World War, to be fomented by taking advantage of differences between political Zionists associated with Jews in Israel and leaders of the Islamic world. Look at what's going on right now with Tucker Carlson and Israel and Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk. Look at this nonsense. What are you seeing? Who's a player and who's an American? Can you see it? The war would be conducted so that Islam, the Muslim world or the Arabic world, and political Zionism, the state of Israel, would mutually destroy one another. Other nations would be drawn in, leading to a complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economic exhaustion of humanity. Outcome, collapse of Christianity, basically meaning the collapse of Protestant, of actual people talking about Jesus, atheism, and other ideologies, leading to a universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer and the establishment of a new world order, one world government, religion under Illuminati Masonic control. Where does it heed from? What is this? What are you looking at? You take some of these pictures and you kind of sit there and you look at that and you say, what the hell is that? There's nothing to, that's just a bunch of people way back marking down things that makes absolutely no sense. You can't discern any logical information from that whatsoever. There's been 16 of these found. They're all exactly the same. This is the tablets of the Sumerian King's List. What is left of it? Pieces of it are obviously broken off. You're seeing different ones, different pieces, different examples. Some of them have single sides, some of them have four sides, depending on which ones were found where. We can read this stuff. This stuff connects to exactly what it is that we're talking about today. A king's list, a kingship, a decree of ownership that we are the cattle. It does not matter what you think. What matters is what they are doing. What matters is what they mean by what they say. What matters is what they are orchestrating. What matters is what they are ritualistically programming into society. And this is where they believe their power to lord over earth comes from. What you're seeing there is an unbelievable, I mean, unbelievable, in-depth historical record that doesn't actually line up with anything that you would think of as normal lifespans. Here is the translation. After the kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Friday, or it was in the kingship was in Eridu. In Eridu, Alalim became king. He ruled for 28,800 years. Alalgar ruled for 36,000 years. Two kings ruled for 64,800 years. Then Eridu fell, and the kingship was taken to Badatibira, which I'm not going to be able to say a lot of these names, and I haven't even began to try. I want you to see this. I want you to see it. This is the interpretation of that tablet. These tablets, all of them match. The 16 that were found match. And men, you're going to see some interesting stuff as we look through this. Ruled for 28,000 years. The divine Demuzi, the shepherd, ruled for 36,000 years. Three kings ruled for 108,000 years. Then Badtibira fell, and the kingship was taken to Larak. Then Larak fell, and the kingship was taken to Sipar. And then Sipar fell, and the kingship was taken to Sarupak. In Sarupak, Ibaro Tutu became king, ruled for 18,600 years. One king ruled for 18,600 years. 5 cities, 8 kings ruled for 305,200 years. Then the flood swept over. The flood represents a time around 12,000 years ago. This is history written down in clay tablets with evidence to substantiate it because it came from many different civilizations. They were trying to keep this information relevant throughout time for whatever reason. I believe for the reason that we are currently existing in right now. After the flood had swept over, the kingship had descended from heaven. The kingship was in Kis. Gisser became king. He ruled for 1,200 years. Notice the times dropped dramatically after the, quote, flood. This is written on the tablet. It explains the flood. It says it on the tablet. Kalum ruled for 840 years. Atab ruled for 600 years. Just read a few of these. Atama, the shepherd who ascended to heaven and put all countries in order, became king. He ruled for 1,500 years. This is kingship. This is connected to this. Okay? No confusion. Same thing. Why? Doesn't matter what you believe. What matters is what they believe. They believe that they lord over you, that they rule you. This is where it comes from. As we move through the tablets, by the way, you see something pretty unbelievable unfolding. Time shrinks. Then Uruk was defeated. Kingship was taken to Ur. Ur was defeated. The kingship was taken to Awan. You seen that name before? Awan became king. He ruled for years. The stuff that's blanked out here is stuff that's messed up on the tablet. That can't be read because it's missing. 3 kings ruled for 356 years. Then Awan was defeated, and the kingship was taken to Kis. Sududa, the fuller, became king, ruled for 200 plus years. Here you see the time shrinking as we move down. This is all on this. We're literally reading this tablet. And it's not like really argued over. It's not like being argued about. This is deemed the interpretation. What they argue about is like, they say that they say this is all fairy tales, and that, people were confused, but they wrote it down on a bunch of different tablets, and they were really intent on making sure it was all accurate, and it all matches many other different tablets that were found not in the same region, in many different regions on different parts of the planet. And by the way, guys, we are going to just continue to roll tonight because I don't think we have enough time to stop. There's just so much going on with we're so much more we're going to get to. We're getting ready to get into something that's really getting ready, I think, to open your eyes to, like, how we follow this and how we explain this to people. It's not very difficult to explain to people that there are people that are ruling the planet that seem like they have been handed a quote unquote authority to rule over the planet, and then they come out and they say, no matter what you say, what we say is what matters. And then when the American people stand up and say, no, it's what we say, then what we get is all of you people telling us that we're not allowed to say that, and all of you people listen to the people that are saying that they have right to lord over you. It might be biased. Kis was defeated, the kingship was taken to Aksak Unzi, became king, ruled for 30 years. See, look at the diminishment. Now here we're down to Usi, ruled for 7. Ister, ruled for 11. See how this is declining? Now here we have right here in the green, where you're going to see, this is dates, this is the dates that we can line up with these events. So we can, starting about right here, we know exact dates from our side looking back to what matches up with these tablets. So in other words, you're looking at here for the years 2341 to 2316. This starts to correlate with more modern information that were found in Nippur and the Nag Hammadi and a number of other places that have confirmed that these kingships, quote unquote, you're seeing rulerships of a king. Each king is a bloodline. The bloodline, for whatever reason to them, it's not for us to speculate. Who cares? They deem it sacrosanct. They deem it that's what they're worshiping effectively. What they're worshiping is their bloodline. They're worshiping their ability to lord over you and utilize this realm that we are in to keep you, number one, to keep you docile, and number two, to keep you uninformed so that you'll keep making mistakes and never recognize that you're actually fighting something that you can't see. So all of this, I mean, this is, like I said, and the links for this will be provided for you. They are already here in the chat. You can go grab them. And I am, guys, you have questions, you have thoughts, you have things you want to point to or look at or notice or whatever, I'm open for it. I'd love to see it, but I'm showing you what it is that the people that explained to me how this all works and the way that I got on to understanding how this all works, I'm sharing it with you. I'm showing you what it is that the kingship of Earth is. The kingship of Earth is globalism. The kingship of Earth is communism. The kingship of Earth is socialism. The kingship of Earth is any tool they can use necessary to shut you the hell up and establish control over you. There's literally nothing else that it can be. And right here you have it stacking all the way down to the 13 kings above here ruled for 215 years. Now, why is that important? Because these 13 kings are effectively the kings where the bloodlines come from. And you can go through, and I've got evidence and videos and stuff that I might end up getting into some of that, some of the weeds on this with some of the stuff that I have that can show you this. But you can literally track these houses all the way up, and even with utilizing the stuff in the Bible, track where they went and who they became, and literally who they are now. And the Pesurs that we talk about here are the Merovingian bloodline. They are the hidden bloodline. All of these bloodlines that you're seeing on the screen in front of you are hidden. None of them are on the surface. They're hidden on purpose. They're hidden from you. But the interesting thing is that they're hidden from you, but they're not hidden from themselves. So if you were, for instance, to interface with a human being that was of the cult right now, let's say that is, high up in business or whatever, but they have blood, family connection to any of those 13 kings. If you were to take that person, follow them home, and then ransack their house and look through all of their documents, what you're going to find is you will find somewhere in that house, you will find a chest, of some sort, whether it be a box, it'll be the size, it's not going to be little, that will have all of the ancient history of who they were related to and who came before them, of them and all of the other families that are part of this cult. And the ones that are higher up will have the decode. They'll be able to tell you that Anderson Cooper is really a Vanderbilt, or Tucker Carlson is really or this person is really Because what started happening in America after the initiation of the Federal Reserve is they started hiding the bloodlines and eliminating the references to the Peseurs or any of these other people, and they've been diligently hiding this stuff behind everybody's back. And what's interesting is the number of people. The reason that you know these things is because people have found things that weren't destroyed. They're supposed to be either initiating their children and passing this stuff on, or destroying it so no one can find it if they have no lineages or no one to pass it on to. Not me saying that. That's what they do. Kingship and law. We're having a binary conversation. Kingship, law, no middle ground. You get to choose. If you want kingship, then you aren't an American. You're something else. And we don't care what you think. Simple. I don't care. I don't have empathy. No, we're not on equal ground with communists. Why? Because if we were to left it up to the communists, you would have never had freedom to begin with. You would have never established a right of a fair trial. You would have never established free speech. You would never establish the Second Amendment. Who hates the Second Amendment more than a king? You see all these people out here running around with these dumb signs that say no kings. They couldn't be bigger hypocrites and liars, because what they really want is they want a king. They want the guy sitting there on High Castle that says, put the mask on, it's dangerous outside. That's what they want. But they go out in droves and protest and stand there and make a virtue signal that they're somehow standing up for your best interest. I live in Southern Oregon. Southern Oregon is full of counterculture, quote unquote, boomer communists. It's crazy. It's crazy to see these people that are completely 100% devoid of any information whatsoever. And they've been trained from whenever they were young and running around without any clothes on to concerts up and down the West Coast that, for some reason, that the country that allowed them to do that is bad. And us defending ourselves against a foreign invasion is bad. How can that be bad? It isn't. The people that are saying that there's something wrong with you for saying it's bad are bad. So whenever we look at this and we say, okay, well, it's not like they're not hiding it. They say this is the kingship. These are the kings. And they have been given authority through this institution to wield the power over earth. That's why you have the three centers, Washington, D.C., the Vatican, and the City of London. One of those sides of the pyramid is no longer participating in this project. And I will guarantee you that all of you get that answer right. How many people know who William Carr is? You guys know who William Carr is? Have you ever heard of William Carr? I think you're going to find this extraordinarily interesting. And like I said, again, we're going to be digging through a couple of different things that, whenever you talk about, let's talk about that for a second. Let's jump into that for a second. Conspiracy. It's very interesting that the things that they consider conspiracy and the things that the people that are generating and blabbering and bloviating about conspiracy 24/7 have not a damn clue what the hell they're talking about. They won't ever tell you what it is that's actually censored. Okay? When I read to you about the 3 world wars of Albert Pike, have you ever seen Alex Jones read that? Have you ever seen any of these people in any of these networks on any of these shows read that or understand that that's exactly what's going on right now as they scream and yell and say, oh, the Zionists are taking over? No. Why? What do all of us effectively have in common to stand up against this absolute unbelievable nonsense? What do we all have in common? We collectively have a country that we deem it necessary to punish people who do the wrong thing, otherwise leave them the hell alone. That model does not work at all with kingship. That model does not work at all with communism. That model doesn't work at all with thinking for yourself or freedom of thought. Our choices as Americans are subject to all of this nonsense if we allow it to be. And the establishment is trying to make you weak so that you just sit back and allow it to be. And then the people that complain about it are the problem. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to make more problems for the people that complain about it. And the best way to make more problems for the people that complain about it is to give you better information. So, William Guy Carr, 1895 to 1959, was an English-born Canadian naval officer, submariner, World War I service, World War II Royal Canadian Navy Intelligence Operations Officer, author of Naval Histories, and later a prominent conspiracy theorist and anti-communist activist. He served in various naval roles, including intelligence work, and after retirement became president of the National Federation of Christian Laymen in Toronto and the editor of the anti-Masonic newsletter News Behind the News, and lectured from the 1930s onward on an international conspiracy involving communism and capitalism, both allegedly controlled by the same hidden power. Now, conspiracy. You're thinking conspiracy. Okay, conspiracy is the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. They still say that that's not real. Conspiracy is this information about Albert Pike, who wrote down exactly what he was going to do with the 3 world wars and how he was going to implement communism to destroy the West. Their big plan to utilize Iran, Russia, and China as a counterbalance to eventually overcome us, because what they would do would be to feed us garbage for decades and decades and decades, making us lazy, making us stupid, making us ridiculous, making us focus on the wrong things, taking away everything that was important so that we didn't care enough to fight for what it is that we had. Whenever they tell you that these things are conspiracy, look deeper, because oftentimes, more than not, you will find that it is absolutely not a conspiracy. It is provable. Carr's major conspiracy works include Pawns in the Game. Some of you may have read this. I'm not sure if you have, but this was effectively Bill Cooper's mentor. This is the person where Bill Cooper got a lot of his information from. And posthumously completed Satan, Prince of the World. This person connected Satanism to communism, and Satanism to globalism, and Satanism to the protocols of the elders of Zion, not the Jews. A long time ago, his ideas significantly shaped later American Illuminati conspiracy literature. Yeah, because he created it. He proved that it was real and happening, and it connected to, quote, kingship. Carr framed world history as an ongoing cosmic and earthly chess game, pawns in the game between the forces of good, God, Christ, Christianity, constitutional government, individual liberty, and evil, Lucifer, Satan, and his human agents. The struggle is spiritual, Ephesians 6:12, and material. Humanity at large, regardless of race, creed, or class, serves as expendable pawns manipulated by a tiny hidden elite and or Cattle. Cattle. The central claim, a contentious, Mr. President, are you worried to be fighting a worldwide satanic cabal? Maybe. A continuous Luciferian conspiracy, also called the World Revolutionary Movement. That sounds a lot like a bunch of commies pretending like they're out there fighting communism, like Flynn has with America's future. Seeks total world domination through a one-world totalitarian dictatorship. This would abolish Christianity and all religions, nations, private property, the traditional family, and patriotism, replacing them with atheistic materialism, state supremacy, the state is your God, and Luciferian doctrine. Might is right. Absolute despotism. Key quote from Carr's paraphrased, synthesized from his works: the high priests of the Luciferian creed work from the darkness. They remain behind the scenes. They keep their identity and true purpose secret, even from the vast majority of those that they deceive. International communists and international capitalists, bankers, are portrayed as rival, yet ultimately allied totalitarian forces, both pawns or instruments of the same secret director. They temporarily cooperate to crush Christian democracy before the final synthesis under one world rule. Now, that is very important to understand, because that's part of the way they've been able to develop this cynicism with the people that hate capitalism. You know, you have to make capitalism something unappealing. So they've effectively been able to take what happened with the Federal Reserve, that reality, taught America over the period of a century a different thing about capitalism. The capitalism that we saw when we were young, that basically gave everything that wasn't nailed down to everybody else but you, was not the capitalism of your forefather. That capitalism where you were able to accrue whatever wealth it was that you accrue and keep what it was that you accrued, and didn't owe anything to anybody about it and didn't have to answer to anybody about it, that went away with the Federal Reserve. Donald Trump says, make America great again. They try to say that what he means is take us back to slavery. I'm saying what he means is take us back to a monetary policy that benefited the American people, not a monetary policy that benefits feudalism or that benefits the thesis, antithesis thing that's been going on for the last 100 years between the capitalists and the communists. Because the capitalists and the communists are in a thesis, antithesis back and forth, and both sides are being controlled. Well, then you have a capitalist that comes in and shows you what an actual capitalist is, and all the people that are against capitalists trigger to him as opposed to the capitalism that they weren't fighting before. You see? They're fighting Donald Trump and his capitalism, not the capitalism that was there before Donald Trump that was on pure display, but 100% controlled by the powers that be without anybody really being able to get out of the box or say anything outside of anything that was deemed party lines, whether it be Republican or Democrat. That's why MAGA is so much different. They've eroded the party line. You go to a Trump rally and you're going to see immediately that there is no party line. You're going to see immediately that there are all aspects of society recognized. It's not just a bunch of white people. There's gay people, there's black people, there's Latino people, there's foreign people, there's tons of, it's diversity is our strength. They're supposed to tell us, but what they tell you on TV is that it's just a bunch of MAGA Nazis. But in all reality, they're fine with voting for a Nazi, and Bernie Sanders goes out there and defends a guy with a Nazi tattoo ad nauseum for weeks and weeks and weeks until it comes out that he's raped some lady, and that she's actually, thank God, what a blessing that she came forward and had the strength to say it. But it's pretty convenient timing, considering that I guarantee you that they had this story in their pocket and they just finally couldn't overtop it. They couldn't overcome the pushback on this guy. So this is not, so what we have now, the capitalist society that Donald Trump is engineering, the golden era, the golden age, as he calls it, that is what he's trying to do with Make America Great Again, is bring us back to the point at which capitalism benefited you, not the select few at the top. And that's 100% what he's doing with these Trump accounts, and building up. What he's doing with the Trump accounts is he's creating an avenue that's going to save Social Security and Medicare or Medicaid. It's going to save all of that because he's going to get the next generation starting now to invest in themselves and to not be dependent on society, maybe not even dependent on society to have to withhold their earnings over the course of their life because they don't need it. They can opt out of the program. The reason that you couldn't opt out of the program is because you were too damn broke. You don't have enough to opt out of the program. You didn't make enough to say, I don't want the money that I earned and put into my investment once I'm older because I have plenty. Very few people are able to do that. Very few. Donald Trump wants to change that. He wants to make it so that maybe all of us can do that. Maybe everybody can do that. Maybe if everybody has something, then maybe we all work together to protect what each other has as opposed to only protecting what we personally have. What if we all protected what everyone else had with the same force and vigor that we protected what it was that we had? Or what if we wanted to give the same type of freedom of perspective or thought to everybody, not just the people that agreed with us? That was the amazing thing that your founders thought might be a bedrock for a great foundation for the bedrock of our country. Carr traced the plot to ancient times. The plot to ancient time. I'm sure this is all coincidence. We could just dismiss this, right? We don't really think that these kings have been kept up with through the church. We don't really think that this is actually an organization to make sure the paperwork stays right and the right people get kingship whenever they come to bring their paperwork from their treasure chest to claim their kingship. We don't think that's connected, do we? The synagogue of Satan, Revelation 29:39, those who say they are Jews are not, refers not to Jews as a race or religion, but to a small cabal of false priests, money lenders, and Illuminati type figures operating since Christ's era, going back a couple thousand years. Matter of fact, he might have turned over some of their tables. Christ identified the money changers, the bankers, the scribes, and the Pharisees as the Illuminati of his day, and Carr claims the Illuminati killed Christ. Modern organizational phase 1770-76, the international money lenders recently organized as the House of Rothschild, hired by Weishaupt, a Jesuit-trained professor of canon law at Ingolstadt University who defected from Christianity. Weishaupt embraced Luciferian ideology and revised ancient protocols for world domination. The protocols that aren't real, by the way. And Q did point to those protocols, just so you understand that. That's not like just out there. He found it, but they do still, every talking head will say that that's a conspiracy, just like the Albert Pike World War was. That's a conspiracy. It's not real. That's just fake. You're making stuff up, shady. Or anybody else that says it. I'm just personalizing it. He founded the Bavarian Illuminati in 1776. Holders of the light. The Illuminati recruited elites in finance, education, art, and government. They used bribery, blackmail, infiltration, control of youth education, media, and secret insinuating brethren, espionage, and terror networks. 1782 Congress of Wilhelmsbad, Illuminati merged with or heavily infiltrated Freemasonry, especially the atheistic subversive Grand Orient Lodges, distinct from what Carr viewed as more benign regular English Freemasonry. These became revolutionary underground networks against you. Albert Pike's 19th century Scottish Rite Freemasonry, then head of the Luciferian priesthood, organized the new and reformed Palladian Rite, or Palladian Rite, allegedly detailed a long-term plan disputed in 1871, later by Mazzini, for 3 world wars and revolutions to achieve the goal. Pike allegedly taught secret worship of Lucifer as the true God of light. First World War, Second World War. And guess what didn't happen? What if We've already stopped it. The structure is strictly hierarchical and compartmentalized. Highest directions, the high priests, remain unknown even to most initiates. The bloodline, the names, unknown. The only people that know are the people that have it in their documentation at home. No matter what home is, no matter where you are on earth, the only people that know are the people that are in the know. Donald Rumsfeld says there are known knowns and there are unknown knowns, but the known of the unknown is the known of the thing that's the craziest thing is the unknown that is unknown. Gobbledygook. Secrecy, ritual, oaths of absolute obedience, and psychological control are central. Secrecy, ritual, oaths, absolute obedience, oaths that are taken in coffins. Communism as a tool of secret manipulation. Carr did not view communism as a genuine proletarian or organic movement. Neither do I. It was deliberately created, financed, and directed by the Illuminati and the international bankers as a weapon. I'm hoping that you guys can see a lot of how and what Jeff and I talk about every day is relevant to all of this stuff. And why we're so passionate about what it is that we're trying to bring to the forefront to understand that, we're talking about the pesos, we're talking about the last couple hundred years of society. This opens the conversation up into the last many, many years of society. In 1829 New York meeting united nihilists and atheists under the banner of communism with their funding ties alleged to figures like the Clinton Roosevelt, also figures like Prescott Bush, who literally the Nazi propaganda meeting, or not meeting, but event that they did in Madison Square Garden that you had the pictures from, that Hillary Clinton tried to connect that to Donald Trump. Well, that was from these guys, the communists, who were trying to implement it here. Karl Marx, described by Carr with anti-Semitic framing as Rabbi's nephew, and Engels produced the Communist Manifesto under Illuminati direction. The Communist Manifesto that we went over back earlier in the show, right here. Karl Marx, described by Carr with anti-Semitic framing as a rabbi's nephew. Eagle produced the Communist Manifesto. Russian Revolution 1917, a key objective of World War I per Pike's alleged plan, financial and facilitated by international bankers. Jacob Schiff was there at the creation of the Federal Reserve. So was Warburg. So was all of them. Routing funds via Germany for Lenin's return. How do you know they're a communist? If they read Lenin or Marx. Overthrew the czars and established atheistic communism as a base to destroy Christianity and religion in Russia and export revolution to weaken other governments. That did, in fact, occur. That in 1917, that was written down in the late 1800s, decades before. Communism serves as antithesis to capitalism or Nazism. You see how they're trying to connect Nazism to capitalism so they can have a counterbalance. Nazism is actually closer to communism than it could possibly be to capitalism. How can Nazism be capitalism? Both camps are manipulated to exhaust nations, destroy faith, increase debt control, and move towards synthesis in one world dictatorship. Lenin was the first canonized saint of the Illuminati totalitarian creed. Carr emphasized that bankers financed both sides of war and revolution since at least 1776 because, why? Because we shot redcoats in the face. Pissed them off. Still pissing them off. Profiting from debt while advancing the plan. Perspective on the church, religious orders, and secret infiltration. Carr portrayed the conspiracy as fundamentally anti-Christian with the explicit goal of destroying the Catholic, universal Christian church and all religion. See? Look at this. The institution to destroy the institution. They'll never look there. The pyramid and all-seeing eye on the U.S. Great Seal allegedly symbolized the Illuminati plot to destroy the church and erect a one-world dictatorship. On church orders, Jesuit, Weishaupt education, and canon law background provided a link for the defector from the product of the major Catholic religious order who turned Luciferian and founded the modern Illuminati, and this is the presented as evidence of how elements or training with the church structures could be co-opted or produce defectors for the conspiracy. In Satan, Prince of This World, Carr discusses secret societies and subversive movements more broadly, with references in secondary summaries to groups like the Jesuits and the Rosicrucians as alleged conduits or harboring dark satanic elements alongside Freemasonry and Illuminati networks. The conspiracy infiltrates or uses high places, including channels of information and institutions. Primary mechanism, secret societies. Illuminati, Grand Orient. This is why you see me constantly on social media asking them to tell me their lodge number. They're all willing to hate on Jewish people until you ask them to reveal what lodge they attend, and you will notice that they start to scurry back into their little troll-like homes. To infiltrate governments, education, media, and religious institutions to promote atheism, secularism, moral corruption, and division. Examples include attacks on clergy during the French Revolution and the persecution of the church under the Russian communism. Communism being built in other countries as a weapon to utilize against a target country that wasn't going along with what it was that they were being told that they should be doing. We have to stop these danged old Americans, these danged old patriots. Carr did not claim the church for its orders controlled communism or the conspiracy. Rather, the Luciferian secret power targets and undermines the church, positioning himself as a defender of Christianity against atheism and secularism associated with Christians by organization opposing communism. Christianity and the church aren't exactly the same thing. Carr claimed his conclusions rested on documentary sources from the Bavarian government raids. And also, by the way, this is actually in the links as well. You can interact with this conversation here, and you can add to it and ask questions of Grok in the thread of get your own ideas of who this person was. Ultimate goals in the final stage: established undisputed one world government dictatorship, reveal Lucifer openly as God after destroying any opposition per Pike's plan, reduce humanity to compliant human cattle under total satanic despotism. Carr believed the game had reached its final stages by the 1950s, with communism as a major advancing pawn, and events like the UN fluoridation, I think that's supposed to be diabetes and media control, further steps, debates. That doesn't quite fit there, but Carr's activism and legacy. Carr was vocal anti-communist in the McCarthy era. Remember what we talked about on the show, if you didn't catch it, Roy Cohn, and was very, very close with McCarthy. Roy Cohn and Donald Trump were very, very close. So Donald Trump has maybe he has an understanding. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think that Donald Trump understands what a communist is? Or do you think Donald Trump is confused by the political science definition of what a communist is? Critiques of context, historians and critics describe this. And here you have the little disclaimer: his theories as anti-Semitic variants of the conspiracism, relying on debunked and forged documents, selective history, logical fallacies. They fit a tradition from barrel and protocols, but lack credibility. Primary evidence for the grand Luciferian dictator. Carr's naval background lent him an air of authority among audiences. It's up to you. Does that seem like complete conjecture and not connected whatsoever to the things that are going on in the world today? Or does it seem like there might be something to it? That was the reference here, by the way, was the World Revolutionary Movement that we touched on right at the top of this. Where was it? Up here, World Revolutionary Movement. It was right here. Somewhere here you go. Central claim, a contentious Luciferian conspiracy, also called the World Revolutionary Movement. That's not a fake. That's not phony. That's not something that Shady made up. That's something that's right here on the old Wikipedia, and you're more than welcome to dig right in. Figure it out for yourself. If you don't believe me, and if you think I'm wrong, I'd love to hear from you, because I honestly don't think that I am wrong, at least. This was interesting because, and I wanted to bring this in today, and it's very cool that we discovered this literally as on the show. I think early last week, we were reading about someone made mention of the Communist Control Act of 1954. And then I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. And so I decided that I would just run over there to the Q map, and let's plug in the number 1954, and guess what we got? 1954 Q post 1954. You cannot debate this, guys. This is 100% factual evidence. This is Q post number 1954. We're going to read the contents in a second. Here you have the Communist Control Act of 1954, which I believe, and we've been batting this around a little bit behind the scenes at the MG show, but I think that this is going to be a very powerful tool in the near future. This is something that has been passed by Congress, signed in by Dwight Eisenhower, but has been diluted over time, largely due to McCarthy, as a matter of fact, trying to act like, the media came out and telling you that there was no communism, that Hollywood wasn't doing anything, that it was all just you being scared of nothing and pulling your hair out over nothing and making mountains out of molehills again. You know how we're constantly out here making mountains out of molehills. Well, it's interesting to me, maybe connected, maybe not. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it isn't. But the Communist Control Act of 1954 was originally purposed as an amendment to the Internal Security Act of 50, which would have sought to combat the spread of communism in labor unions. Well, the labor unions became the communism, so that's going to be tough to do. Apart from its secondary focus with concentrated or illegality of communist front organizations, the bill was drafted with the intention of tackling the root of pro-communist sentiment in the United States. The Communist Party, in its second section, the Communist Control Act, characterized the Communist Party as an agency of a hostile foreign power. The party was described as an instrumentality of the conspiracy to overthrow the government. Isn't that interesting, the way that that's characterized? The act made membership in the Communist Party a criminal act. Maybe that's why they scream and tell you things like Antifa isn't real. Or they create other organizations where they can bring money into to claim that they're, quote unquote, fighting communism. And we're going to be digging into that next week in the fourth episode, which is going to be about the network that implements the power around this substructure. In other words, the people that are the enforcement arm of the communists that are currently being exposed. So whenever we grab this here and we say, okay, well, post 1954, well, what's in post 1954? Well, look at this. Hammer and sickle. Nazi pin, tag with communist symbol. Huh. Is that Jesus on the hammer and sickle? Post 1954. Is this Anderson Vanderbilt and his bloodline family? Notice the necklace. Symbolism will be their downfall. Do you think that's a coincidence that the word communist and the highlighting of the Nazi pin and the presentation to the Pope being post 1954 is a coincidence? Up to you to decide. I would never tell you what to think. I think you know what I think. And so here we have this interesting dynamic that we're going to jump into here. Let's see, where am I at? Okay, got a couple things here. Where are we on time? Oh, we're actually doing pretty good on time. So what I've done here is I went back, and this is qanon.pub, the website, and this is different than the other aggregators, the way that it is, the way that the other sites are really good in being able to like search information and go get specific posts, specific dates, specific things that you can search within them to find them again. But it doesn't really, it does present it in a long form post after post format, but it takes a long time to scroll and to find the stuff that you're needed. And what we're going to go through here is we're going to go through, I want to go through some of these posts in order. As a matter of fact, let me like do the horrible scroll thing to you here, because I want to back up here because we got a little bit extra time. And some of our audience, if you guys are out there on a podcast or hearing this on a podcast, so you can see here, this is going to be right too much. Yeah. Because what this does is it gives you the Q post in the order that they were put out. And a number of times Q came giving us some specific pictures, and the pictures kind of create a story in order. And I thought I could go back to some of these older ones, but I'm not finding them. I'm going to come back to where I was at mid-January. But you can grab this by the scroll on the side, and you can move through the posts a lot easier. It's going to be down to a storm is coming post here somewhere. But this is kind of important to connect with some of the stuff that we've been talking about here. Not only the the 1954 post, but some of these other ones. So this is 541, and you're here. We're in January of 2018, just a couple of months after the Q operation started. And here you're seeing the posts all put together in order as Q was posting them. Fight, 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 demand public disclosure, be loud, be heard. This is just the beginning. 2018 will be glorious. The Great Awakening. And then here is a series of pictures that it's up to you to decide why Q posted these pictures. There's Ted Turner. That's Bill Gates' father. That's George Soros. That's David Rockefeller in the back. Sure, it wasn't anything to do with this. Kingship. Surely that's not what Q was trying to point to, right? Kingship? Was Q trying to say that there's a hidden elite that looks and mocks us behind our backs and deems itself the leaders of the world, and that's why they talk down their nose to you? And that's why you aren't respected by them? And that's what Donald Trump means whenever you are respected again? Whenever you are respected, that means that someone is intimidated by you. And I don't mean that in a bully way. But like I was saying before, polite society, whenever you're respected, what does that mean? It means that nobody's going to mess with you. And Donald Trump is saying the world respects us again. That doesn't mean that they're not making fun of Donald Trump. Like the media keeps, that doesn't mean that they're not making fun of you. What that means is they're not going to do squat about it because they can't. That's what it means. And that's the power that you should be taking. You should never cower. You should never be in fear. You should never, ever, ever, never, ever, ever allow anything that you fear. And I'm going to look back at you. Never allow anything that you fear to stop you from doing what it is that you are doing. Utilize the idea of recognizing that, wow, why am I intimidated by this? Why am I afraid of this? Why is this making me like that? Use that as your power to recognize something within and dig deeper, go harder, stand firmer, desire more. Find it. That's what you're put here for. You're not put here to cower away from these people. You think about the percentage of people born on planet Earth that get to be born here in America. Take advantage of that. See if there's a way that you can leave a legacy to other people that remember you when you're gone because you did something for them. That's what it is that they don't want us to do. That's what it is that these people want us to, they want you. Are you afraid of that? Is there any human being that's afraid of that physically? Look at this. No, they're afraid of you. They are afraid of you. There is no other way to describe this. That's the reason they have to implement these systems. That's the reason they have to work behind the curtain. Why can't they just tell me that they worship Hiram Abiff naked in a coffin? I don't care. Why you got to keep it so secret? A series of pictures posted by Q. You decide what they mean. I'm not going to tell you what these pictures mean. I'm showing you a little bit of context. These pictures were all posted in order with no captions. There's a substructure that you cannot see. There's a substructure that does not want you to ever be able to see clearly. Q wanted you to be able to see without a filter. No filter. Raw information sent directly to your spirit, sent directly to you to pay attention to. You're allowed to pretend it doesn't exist. You're allowed to say it doesn't exist. You're allowed to interpret it any way that you would like, and you're allowed to say anything that you would like to say about it, and you're allowed to have your opinion. But you're also, on some level, at some point, you should have some sort of tether to the truth. A correspondence between what it is that you think, feel, believe, and profess that matches something that you can associate it with in your reality every single time. Not sometimes, every time. This is how you navigate without being, quote unquote, made a fool of. This is a pope. This is a post from the Pope. I continue to follow. This is May 22nd. Okay. Is this person on the side of America or Iran? Is this person on the side of law or kingship? I'm going to read this and then I'm going to read the comments. And I want you to tell me if you believe that Pope Leo, the 1964, what the hell ever that is. I know it's 14 or whatever. I continue to follow the situation in the Middle East with dismay. Like other regions of the world, it is torn apart by war and violence. We cannot remain silent in the face of the suffering of so many defenseless victims of these conflicts. What wounds them wounds all of humanity. The death and pain caused by these wars is a scandal for the entire human family and a cry that rises to God. What the are you talking about? You are basically, that right there is saying, all bow down to the IRGC. Is that America? Is that loyal? Is that the free? Is that on the side of the people who are actually fighting the people that are destroying the world? Or is that on the side of the people that are emboldened and manipulated and placed and part of the characters in the play and the act support? Again, this is for you to decide, for you to make your own mind up about what it is that you are seeing here. Everyone knows that Adolf Hitler existed. No one disputes that. The terror and destruction that this madman inflicted upon the world are universally recognized. Hitler came from a poor family which has absolutely no social position. That's not true. He was a high school dropout and nobody ever accused him of being cultured. See, that's not exactly true, but that is the narrative. Similarly, we know that a man named Vladimir Lenin also existed. Like Hitler, Lenin did not spring from a family of social lions. The son of a petty bureaucrat, Lenin, who spent most of his adult life in poverty, has been responsible for the deaths of tens of millions of your fellow human beings and the enslavement of nearly a billion more. I'm showing you that, like Hitler, Lenin set up nights in a dark or a dank garret to scheming how he could conquer the world. We know that too. That's not what happened. These were actually bloodline human beings that were retrieved from the throes of poverty to ascend to their positions. In other words, once you put a person in the situation of having absolutely nothing, what they will do to keep what you give them is everything. It's not theoretically possible that a billionaire could be sitting to a garret of the penthouse of the Manhattan, London, or Paris, or dream the same dream as Lenin or Hitler, but you'll have to admit that these theoretically possible, Julius Caesar, a wealthy aristocrat, did, and such a man might, from the alliance or association with other like-minded men, might or not, or he not. Caesar did. These men would be superbly educated, command immense social prestige, and be able to pool astonishing amounts of money to carry out their purposes. These are advantages that Hitler and Lenin did not have. It's difficult for the average individual to fathom such perverted lust for power. The typical person or whatever nationality wants only to enjoy success in his job, to be able to afford a reasonably high standard of living, complete with the leisure and travel. He wants to provide for his family in sickness and in health, to give his children and sound education. His ambition stops there. He has no desire to exercise power over others, to conquer other lands or peoples, or to be king. He wants to mind his own business and enjoy life, since he has no lust for power. It is difficult for him to imagine that there are others who have others who march to and for or far different or to a far different drum. But we must realize that there have been Hitlers and Lenins and Stalins and Caesars and Alexander the Greats throughout history. And why should we assume there are no such men today with perverted lust for power? And if these men happen to be billionaires, is it not possible that they would use men like Hitler or Lenin to be pawns to seize power for themselves? Indeed, difficult as this is to believe, such is the case. Like Columbus, we are faced with the task of convincing you that the world is not flat as you have been led to believe all your life, but instead is round. We are going to present evidence that what you call communism is not run from Moscow or Peking, but it is an arm of a bigger conspiracy run from New York, London, and Paris. The men at the apex of the movement are not communists in the traditional sense of the term. They feel no loyalty to Moscow or Peking, and they are loyal only to themselves and for their undertaking. And these men certainly do not believe in the claptrap pseudo-philosophy of communism. They have no intention of dividing their wealth. Socialism is a philosophy with which conspirators exploit, but in which only the naive believe. Just how finance capitalism is used as the anvil and communism as the hammer to conquer the world will be explained. The concept that communism is but an arm of a larger conspiracy has become increasingly apparent throughout the author's journalistic investigations, and he has had the opportunity to interview privately 4 retired officers, spent their careers high in military intelligence. Much of what the author knows, he learned from them, and the story is known of several thousand others. High military intelligence circles are well aware of this network. In addition, the author has interviewed 6 men who have spent considerable time as investigators for the congressional committees in 1953. One of these men, Norman Dodd, headed the Reese Committee investigating of tax-free foundations when Mr. Dodd began delving into the role of international high finance in the world of revolutionary movements. The investigation was killed on orders of Eisenhower occupying the White House. And according to Dodd, the permissible investigate the radical bomb throwers in the streets, but when you began to trace their activities back to the origins of the legitimate world, the political Iron Curtain slams down. You can believe anything you want about communism, except that it is a conspiracy run by men from the respectable world. People will often say to an active anti-communist, I can understand your concern with communism, but the idea that communist conspiracy is making great inroads in the United States is absurd. The American people are not anti-communist. They're not about to buy communism, but it's understandable to be concerned about communism in Africa, Asia, South America, with a tremendous poverty and ignorance and disease. But to the concerned about communism in the United States, where the vast majority of people have no sympathy with it whatsoever, is a misspent concern. On the surface, it appears that the charges made against anti-communists concerned with the internal threat of communism are valid. The American people are not pro-communist, but before our imaginary interviewee walks away in disgust with what he believes is a hokey-pokey survey, you add, sir, before you leave, a couple of other questions I'd like to ask. You won't find these so insulting or ludicrous. Your next question is, what is communism? Will you define it, please? This is what I wanted to get to. Ask people, what is communism? Listen to their answer and understand who they are by their answer. Immediately, a whole new situation has developed. Rather than a near unanimity previously found, we now have an incredible diversity of ideas. There are a multitude of opinions on what communism is. Some will say, oh, communism, well, that's a tyrannical brand of socialism. Others will maintain communism in its originality, or originally intended by Marx, was a good idea, but had never been practiced, and the Russians have loused it all up. A more erudite type might proclaim communism is simply a rebirth of Russian imperialism. If perchance one of the men you asked to define communism happened to be a political science professor from the local college, he might reply to you with, you can't ask what communism is. This is totally a simplistic question about the extremely complex situation. Communism today, quite unlike the view held by the right-wing extremists in America, is not an international monolithic movement. Rather, it is a polycentric, fragmented, nationalistic movement deriving its character through its charismas of the various national leaders, while, of course, there is a wielding of Hegelian dialectics with materialism held in common by the communist parties generally. It's a monumental oversimplification to ask, what is communism? Instead, you should ask, what is the communism of Mao Zedong? Or what is the communism of the late Ho Chi Minh, or Fidel Castro, or Tito? If you think we're being facetious here, you haven't talked to a political science professor lately. Whether you agree or disagree with any of the definitions, or as this be the case, you have one of our own, one thing is undeniable. No appreciable segment of the anti-communist American public can agree on what it is that they are against, and isn't that frightening? Here we have something that almost everybody agrees is bad, but we cannot agree on what we are all against. How would this work in a football game? For example, can you imagine how effective the defense of a football team would be if the front four could not agree with the linebacker, who could not agree with the cornerback, who could not agree with the safety man, who could not agree with the assistant coach, who could not agree with the head coach as to what kind of defense that they should put up against an offense being presented? The obvious result would be chaos. You could take a sandlot team and successfully pit them against the Green Bay Packers. And if the Packers couldn't agree on what it is that they are posing, that is academic. The first principle in any encounter, whether it be football or war, hot or cold, is know your enemy. The American people do not know their enemy. Consequently, it is not strange at all that 3 decades we have been watching one country of the world after another fall behind the communist curtain. In keeping with the fact that almost everybody seems to have his own definition of communism, we are going to give you ours, and then we will attempt to prove to you that it is the only valid one. Communism, an international conspiratorial drive for power on the part of men in high places willing to use any means to bring about their desired aim: global conquest. Globalism. Globalist. And with that, we have reached the end of the presentation here tonight on the Q Lounge Live. A very somber moment that we bring to you to understand the gravity and the depth and the breadth of the problem that we face. The lighter side of it is that we face it together, and that they are communists, and that they are trolls, and that they are miserable creatures, and they cannot beat us no matter what they do. But the reality is, the only way they can beat us is if we refuse to stand up. The only way they can beat us is if we refuse to not support each other. The only way they can beat us is if we let our fellow countrymen languish in the state of ununderstanding and don't say it in a moment where we need to say it. I'd like to thank all of you that donated to the broadcast here tonight. This is the completion of episode 3. Thank you so much. We are on in the beginning portion of the relaunch of the Q Lounge Live here, season 5, episode 3. Communism's true origins. I'd like to thank every single person out there who supports this project for the last 8 years that we have been working on our 9th year now, broadcasting to the world in the spirit of the truth, the realistic, discernible, provable truth that we can show you, and we can change our work upon new information. God bless each and every one of you. Thank you so much. You can contact me, shady@mg.show. You can send me a DM on Twitter. You can argue with me in the comments. Please, I'd like for all of you out there to recognize that we are here to dissuade the notion that they are the political elite. You are the political elite. The reason that you as an American are the political elite is because you are the one that's going to stand up for the little guy. You stand up for the underdog. You speak up for liberty. You speak up for freedom. You're the crazy person that says, I'm not going to shut up. That's the American that we love. That's the anti-communist that we need. And I think we're making a whole bunch of you right here. So we're going to go out and affect change in this unbelievable world. And we're going to turn it back right side up. God bless each and every one of you. God bless America. God bless President Donald J. Trump. And let's help him end communism for good. See you guys in the morning. When I pull up out front, see the Benz on dub. When I roll 20 deep, so it's